What separates good players from the best ones? If the best ones have to win, they win. And that is exactly what Alexander Shvartsman, the 5-time world champion, does for a living. I don't know how many times already he's been on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th or even further place before the last round, and while everyone else made a draw in their games, he won the game and the entire tournament. And something like that happened in the last round of Salo Open 2024. International tournament with the long history, held in Salou, of course, which is around 100 kilometers from the Barcelona, next to the coastline, so it's a great place to rest and to play international checkers tournament. Alexander's opponent in this last round was Alexander as well, but Mogiliański, Grandmaster International representing USA. He is not the youngest player because he is already 82 years old, but still, you must prove that you are playing better against such players. And Alexander Shvartsman himself is not the youngest as well, because he is 57, but he is playing still absolutely the top world level. But looking at the recent results, for example in Flevoland Open, in the World Cup tournament, he was on 17th place. So, not everyone expected that Alexander will handle and win Salou Open 2024. Let's analyze this game. This will be the great example of an attacking game, and Alexander Shvartsman is probably one of the best, if not the best player to learn how to attack in checkers. He started the game by playing 33-29, which is called a Rosenburg opening, and there are many possible lines, for example, Keller system. There is, of course, a Rosenburg system after this and this move. Of course, black pieces can consider playing Sabran's 4 o'clock after this one, and probably the most passive move is this one, 19-24, so this is not something that should be played by you. But this time Alexander chose to play 17-21, so his idea from the opening is to try to surround Alexander Shvartsman. He goes to the center and the second one goes to the edge, and after next few moves we have this position and this standard move, and after 17-21 we have two popular lines, 37-42 or 38-42. Alexander chose to play this move. What can be played by black pieces? For example, this move is quite a passive exchange, because after such exchange you can see that this checker developed to 32 and central position of white looks slightly better. Another variation could be, for example, to play 20-25, and this is something that would choose total surrounding in this game, because you are trying then to control two edges of the board and to somehow lock your opponent in the middle part of the board. But this is a very risky plan, and not many people decide to play it, especially if you are playing against Alexander Shvartsman, who is one of the best attackers in the world, in the history probably. If you want to start your checkers adventure and learn how to play and win at checkers, then in the first link in the description you will find my complete beginner's guide to winning strategies. What else could have been played? After such exchanges, for example 19-23, you must remember that this cannon can be used, not at this moment, you can wait with it, but finally this double exchange that gains many tempos can be played. And about tempos I will tell you something just in a few moves. So after this 38-32, Alexander Mogiliański chooses to exchange to 24, and this is something interesting. So it means that he wants Alexander Shvartsman to have some troubles with developing his left wing, because many times I repeated on my videos that this 46 is considered as the worst piece in the game. So if you can't put it in the game, probably you could get a worse position, but not Alexander Shvartsman, of course. He chooses to leave this checker there in many of his games. But Alexander Mogiliański tries to take over control over this square 24. It gives you the possibility of taking another 23. This central checker would bring the game to the classic position, with the double lock in the central part of the board. And about that I will tell you a bit more later. Alexander Shvartsman plays 31-27, and after another move he goes 43-38. Alexander Mogliański comes to this classic position, and Alexander plays here. And in such positions, after another move made, it's really easy for beginners to have a completely worse position. For example, after choosing something like this move, playing white pieces, 34-30. After few moves, there would be a possibility of having a hanging checker here. That is something that you don't want to happen in your game. After such situation, of course, you can't move on your right side. You can't move with this checker and you can't move with this checker because of simple combinations that could appear in the game. For example, like this, here collecting 2 checkers, so it's an easy win. The second one, of course, is 40-34, and the same combination, similar combination happens in the game. That shows us the meaning of this structure. This column 45-40-34. In classical position, here we have this lock in the central part of the board. There is absolutely important thing about this column and especially those 2 checkers, 45-40, because this is so-called Olympic. It gives you the possibility of making many different combinations, and sometimes even more important than combinations, to make an exchange. 34-29, and this is a very important idea in this game, because if your opponent brings you to the classic position, it means that the space in the symmetrical part of the board is limited for both sides, and you must have the space to make moves. That's the reason why you should have less tempos. What is tempo and what is going on here? Alexander exchanges 37-31, and this is where the tempos will be explained by me, at least I will try. So by tempo we mean a single move on the board, and by exchanging you can improve, you can get more tempos, or you can decrease your number of tempos if you are exchanging backwards. How does it work? For example, you can see that as the result of this exchange, 2 checkers are disappearing from the board. Which ones? This one for black and this one for white. So after this move, this exchange, you can see that those 2 checkers disappeared from the board. And every checker has some value of tempos. The first line means that checkers standing there have the value of 1 tempo. Second line gives the value of 2 tempos. Third one of 3 tempos, etc. So it means that this one standing in the 5th line have the value of 5 tempos, meanwhile this one, like I mentioned, has only 1 tempo. It means that this one from the 5th line stands closer to the king's row, which is the opponent's first row. And if you will get tempos, improve your position, it means that totally, globally, looking at your position, you are bringing your checkers closer to the king, which is part of the goal of the game, and it can help you in realizing the main goal, which is the winning of the game. And how tempos change after this exchange? You can see that after it, white checker from the 2nd line disappears from the board, so it means that the total value of tempos of white decreases by 2. Meanwhile, for black, there is 1 checker disappearing from the 6th row, and means that their global value decreases by 6 points. So 6 minus 2 gives you 4. This exchange gives plus 4 tempos for white, so it means that way they are 4 moves closer to the king. And if you are playing a game in the classic position, you don't want to have more tempos, because it is extremely risky that at some moment of the game you will be out of moves. But Alexander Shvartsman can play like he wants. After another move, 21-26, black pieces force white to make another exchange, because if white locked their wing, this 46 probably would not get into a game, and that would be a small disaster, looking from the strategical point. So Alexander plays 47, 42, and there is another exchange, so he gets additional 4 tempos. And of course, it looks for a beginners like a mistake, but there is always a possibility that if you have this structure, you will be able at some moment of the game to break this classic structure, this classic position, and to have open position with more tempos, and that way you will be the one attacking your opponent. Perhaps you will get to the king sooner than your opponent, and that will give you the victory in the game. So after those 2 exchanges, of course, black wants to hold the classic position, and white slowly develops their position and finally wants to attack in the central part of the board. Now Alexander exchanges to control this edge, and this is of course a very good idea, because now Alexander Shvartsman can't attack here, because after waiting move there will be a simple 1-4-3, of course. So it means that after developing 46, finally he goes to 36, but before that we can see already this exchange that I mentioned before. 2-4-2, and that way this checker from 23 was exchanged, and there is no a classic position anymore. But it doesn't mean that black can't get it again into a classic position. Of course they will try, but the job of Alexander Shvartsman is not to let them do it. Now Alexander, knowing that he is not wanting to play the classic position, he is moving 45-40, and means that he puts all his strengths into the center. So he is not interested in building the Olympic formation, for example by this move, because that way he would destroy this possible column in the future. So 45 is going to the center. For example, after such move like 13-18, there would be a simple combination. So that way, using the tactical part of the game, white doesn't allow black to get into the classic position because of this simple 2-4-3 to a king. So it meant that Alexander was not having the possibility of going to the classic immediately. He played 7-12, 40-34, and slowly, once he is getting to the point, to the square number 23, Alexander is not taking care about that, and after 8-12 he exchanges this checker 18. But what if, in that position, black played 18-23? There is another possibility of going out from this classic position. Of course, once again, exchange 34-29. So that way Alexander could exchange this 23 classical 1, and after few next move he would have even such possibility of not letting his opponent to get to 23 and to keep it open. For example, after such moves there would be such amazing majority exchange 2-4-2 with a winning position for white because of this absolutely strong checker. So that could be the continuation, but it was not played by Alexander. After 8-12, Alexander Shvartsman played 27-22, and now it looks like impossible for black pieces to get to a classic position again. After 21-26, there is 34-30 played, and there is no point in attacking here, because, for example, after a series of exchanges, it would be a quite better position for white pieces after retake of the checker. So perhaps that would be played. Maybe some different plan would be chosen by Alexander Shvartsman. I don't know that. But after this move 3-8, Aleksander Mogliański gives an important information to Alexander Shvartsman. If Alexander controls, and in fact he controls, this edge square 25, there will be almost nothing to do with it, because this exchange 14-12 would not work. But even if this checker would be on its place on 3, then still, after going to 25, it would not be possible to exchange it without controlling 23. So it looks like Aleksander Mogliański decided, okay, there is no job for this checker, so I can move it to the side where the game is being played. After 30-25, both sides have one corner of the board. Black hold 26, white hold 25. And it means that specific symmetrical area is controlled by both sides. So the game will be played in the central part where things are going to happen. 12-17, and slowly it brings the position to the gestem exit from the white side. So here, after move 17-21 and this move 38-32, we can see the idea that would happen in the classic position if white checkers would escape 28-22, which is called a gestem exit. And it gives you the possibility of making extra moves. And to hold this square 22, it's really important that your opponent has those free edge checkers, because that way he can't at any possibility use those central checkers to perform some combination. Of course, sometimes it can happen. For example, after such move and maybe this one, it would not be working maybe, but I just want to show you idea how it could be done. So it would be something like that. Okay, this combination possibility is somehow visible here, but of course it's not good for black. So just the idea I show. Okay, but normally if you want to move those checkers from the edge, the only possibility most of the times would be to exchange it and only forward. So it means that in the classic position you would get more tempos from black side. And after such exchange, of course, there are such combinations like simple 1-4-2, winning a piece. But those are just ideas that I want you to remember. After 8-12, this move was played 43-38, and Alexander, because of missing moves, probably decides to play 13-18. But let's analyze what would happen, for example, after such move 12-18. So after few moves, and that was probably well calculated by Aleksander Shvartsman, Aleksander Mogliański would be out of good moves. In that position, for example, there is this brilliant move, and look at the possibility of black pieces. For example, this one is not looking good, but what to play? After this one, you have a beautiful but simple bridge shot. Sacrificing 1, 2, 3, 4, taking 3 to a king. Something standard idea that you must know, of course. And what else to play? Only something like that. And that position would be just a disaster. After this attack, their black pieces would be forced to take something like this, probably 11-17. And after such exchanges, those checkers are not working and not playing, are locked. So I think that Aleksander Shvartsman would have a great possibilities of winning this game. So finally, the game was played differently, and Aleksander Mogliański exchanges backward, and that way he tries, of course, to put into the game those checkers 9 and 4 that normally were locked on the wing. But that gave Aleksander Shvartsman the time to go to the 6th line of the board, and this is extremely strong checker. So now it's looking absolutely impossible for black checkers to get to the classic position again, because white controls 23, and this is extremely strong when you don't have checkers there, 1 and 5 in your opponent's position, because that would give your opponent the possibility to build the structures, to build the columns, to exchange this checker forward. Meanwhile, in this situation, the only possibility of exchanging it is backward, and it means that it will give black more and more passive position. 8-13, 48-42. Of course, Aleksander Shvartsman is not afraid of such attacks, because he would hold a checker with this exchange. That's the way of defending checkers. And the game continues. 11-17, 44, 6-11, 33-29, and finally happens something that I mentioned before, exchange back. So Alexander Shvartsman is getting more and more attacking position and forces his opponent to make passive exchanges. After few next moves, Aleksander Mogliański escapes to an edge, another edge, and such exchanges are most of the times not good because you exchange your central piece to go to the edge. It can't be good. And after a few next moves, Aleksander Shvartsman exchanges, this time backward, so it's a moment of taking a breath in this attack, but that way he absolutely controls situation on the board because his opponent is on the side. Here he is really low developed in his first lines, and it gives Aleksander Shvartsman time to bring the final attack to the game. And it happens after this move, 29-24. So slowly, Aleksander Shvartsman controls those two important squares, and this one, this outpost, and this edge checker in this example is really helping in the final decisive attack. Those two moves were made, and in that position, if Aleksander Mogliański decided to make this exchange at 18-22, there would be a perfect exchange by Aleksander Shvartsman, 24-19, quickly finishing the game, because black checkers can't attack two checkers here, because then Aleksander Shvartsman would have the possibility of using a sticky move by playing here. So black would be forced to take two pieces, and one piece would be taken by white, but they would get to a king with a winning position. What were the other options? For example, after something like this exchange 9-14, there is a simple move to freeze your opponent out of possibilities. And always, when you are playing your checkers game, look at your opponent's possibilities, because sometimes you will find a move like this, 46-41, that totally limits your opponent of good moves, and it means a quick victory for white. Something similar would happen after 4-10, because this move quickly finishes the game. So it means Aleksander Mogliański was forced again by Aleksander Shvartsman to exchange back, and after exchanging this checker, Aleksander gets on it again, building this structure, this column that will let him to win this game quickly. Now Aleksander Mogliański decides to sacrifice a checker, and that way to destroy this column, this structure of three pieces. But what would happen after other moves like this one? Of course nothing, because that was not possible because of this simple, okay, maybe not this simple, because after that one there would be an exchange, and probably the game would end in a draw, but it would be necessary to sacrifice one more checker by playing here. Of course black can't play here and would take there, and now it would be easily winning for white. So after not having this move possible and playing here, Aleksander could just wait some moves like that, and that's a problem. That's a big problem of having this against those three checkers playing, because this attack 14-19 that normally would force your opponent to exchange back and give you some space to make moves is not possible because of this majority combination 28-23, and despite the fact this king would be captured immediately, there would be another combination 1-4-2, and Aleksander would win this game quickly. So after this interesting sacrifice, Aleksander Mogliański plays 12-17, creating a threat of making this 1-4-2 combination, and at first glance it looks like it is working, but after one sacrifice, another sacrifice can come, and Aleksander Shvartsman gives one, gives two, takes only one, but there is absolutely nothing else to play. You can see that those four checkers are limiting 6 opponents' checkers, and only last moves were there, but you know what would happen. And as a matter of fact, after the possibility of this combination, seeing this coming in that position, Aleksander Mogliański resigned. And Alexander Shvartsman won this game and won the entire tournament. So big congrats for this 57 years old player that is still playing at the top world class level. And after all, he is a world's top 1 ranked player. If you liked this video, let me know in the comment section. Don't forget about leaving the thumb up, subscribing the checkersTV YouTube channel, and thank you for watching. Bye bye.